My love, you won't believe what my family decided about us. I'm still shaking as I say this because it doesn't even feel real. I thought I knew how far they would go, but what I just heard left me speechless. They sat together in one room behind closed doors, and they spoke about you, about me, about everything we've built. They didn't know I was listening from the hallway, heart pounding against the wall, and the words that slipped through that door, they weren't what I expected at all. They didn't whisper doubts the way I feared. They didn't question my feelings the way I thought they might. No, it was something else entirely, something that could change the way we stand in front of the world. I heard one of them say, "It's already too late to stop this." Those words sent chills down my spine. Too late? Too late for what? Were they talking about us, about the way we refuse to let go of each other? Or were they talking about something bigger, something they've already put into motion? I leaned closer, my ear almost against the wood, trying to catch every piece of their plan. And my love, what I heard next made my breath stop. They weren't deciding whether to accept us. They were deciding how to control us. Not just me, not just you, but the very space between us. They talked about putting rules in place, rules that would bind me, tie me, silence me if I ever tried to defend us too loudly. And Saivdord Aftampak, not just Rudputliye. One voice said, "If they resist, we'll cut them off completely." I felt my chest burn as those words sliced into me. Cut us off? From what? From family ties, from the little safety we still have, from the ground we stand on. They sounded so calm, so certain, as if this was already decided long before tonight. My love, you need to understand how serious this is. They are not just against us, they are designing moves like players in a game, planning their steps to corner us. And the more I listened, the more I realized they believe they've already won. But here's the part that shook me the most. One of them said, "They'll never see it coming." And as soon as those words fell, the room went quiet. No more arguments, no more debates, just silence. The kind of silence that means a final decision has already been made. I pressed my hand against the wall, trying to steady myself, but my body wouldn't stop trembling. I wanted to burst into the room, to demand answers, to shout that they had no right to decide for us. But something stopped me, something colder, or bracely, because if they are willing to decide our future behind closed doors, then what else are they willing to do when we're not watching? The door suddenly creaked, and I had to run back before anyone saw me. My heart raced, my mind spinning with every word I had just heard. And now I'm here, telling you this, because you need to know. You need to understand the danger we're walking into together. My love, they didn't just talk about us like we're children. They talked about us like we're obstacles. Obstacles they want to move out of the way. And the scariest part is, I think they already know how. My love, after I slipped away from the door, I walked until my legs trembled. I needed air. I needed space to think. But my head kept replaying their voices. They sounded like people reading from a script they wrote long ago, and that script named us a problem to solve. Here's the first truth I learned when I thought I could breathe. Their decision is practical. It isn't a hiss of anger or a sudden fit. It's a careful plan, with steps, dates, and people who will carry out orders. That cold, slow kind of planning scares me the most. They aren't acting on feelings, they are acting on a map. They set deadlines. I heard a month, maybe 6 weeks, maybe before the season changes. Those words mean they are not waiting for us to change our minds. They are waiting for us to run out of time. And time is the one thing you and I cannot borrow without losing something in return. Next, they decided to use what we love against us. They spoke about small things that appear harmless. Invitations changed, trips planned for our safety, friends asked to visit at odd hours. On the surface, these look like care, but under the surface, they are moves to control where we go and who we meet. Someone suggested, moving our things slowly, not to steal, but to rearrange our life so we feel boxed in. A book here, a photograph there, a small legal paper slipped to make us believe we must wait. Little changes that build a room we cannot leave. Then came the cruel part. They chose a person to speak for them, not to shout, not to yell, someone polite, calm, who can smile and erase the hurt with words that sound like care. That person will come with papers, with reason, and with a smile that makes asking for truth look like a rude interruption. And, my love, smiles can hide sharp edges. They planned a meeting that looks like a peace talk. A table with tea, chairs placed just so, and notes that say we want to help, but the help is a trap. Sign this, agree to that, and they promise comfort in exchange for silence. Comfort bought with our freedom is still a bargain that steals us. I listened as they talked about friends who could be persuaded. Favors whispered to old neighbors, small debts remembered, and a few quiet people who would nod and agree when asked. They build a chorus of agreement so the decision looks like everyone's choice, not just a few people's will. And when the world sees unanimity, it becomes harder to fight. They plan to cut resources. Money moved, access limited, calls delayed, and help slowed. They thought, if they tighten what we depend on, we will lean on them out of need. That is the danger of control, making need into chain. Then there was a part that made my hands go cold. They talked about telling a story, a small lie wrapped as truth, a story that paints us as reckless, as risky, as a danger to what they call family peace. Once people hear that story, sympathy shifts and we become the ones who must explain ourselves to a world that already decided. They prepared who will listen. They figured out who believes them without asking too many questions. Teachers, old friends, even a quiet person at work. People whose nods will sound like proof. They stage the stage so that the curtain falls before we can speak. I ran home that night and watched the house from the lane. Lights went on in rooms that had been dark. Doors opened to let in visitors who wore shoes that clicked too loud for comfort. It felt like the house was rehearsing for a show whose script does not include us as the authors. Then the cruelest plan showed itself. They would offer a deal that appears kind, distance without quarrel. A slow separation dressed as a solution. We will give you space, they say, for your own good. But the space is a slow eraser. It pulls threads out of our days until the picture of us is just a memory on a shelf. They thought of the future in ways that hurt now. They spoke of weddings delayed, jobs altered, moves suggested to far places where support is thin. They rearranged our tomorrow, so it feels impossible to keep what we have today. I tried to find an ally in those voices. I tried to imagine someone who would stand with us and refuse the script. But every time I pictured help, I saw hesitation first. A hand that trembles before it reaches for ours. That doubt is their weapon. It makes resistance lonely before it even starts. Then I found a small note, tucked in a book, they left out on purpose. It was not for me, but it had my initials. The line read like advice. Be reasonable. Keep peace. That sentence sounds soft, but who writes that sentence knows how to turn kindness into a cage. I prepared one answer that night. Not a shout, not a fight, but a small plan to force truth into light. I thought if they see the truth, their plan will break. But as I took the first step, I found the last move I expected. A key in the lock of the neighbor's door, turning slowly, and a low voice saying, "We're ready when you are." My love, when I heard that key turn in the lock, I froze. It wasn't our door, it was the neighbor's, but the voice carried the weight of someone too confident, too calm, like they were part of something larger. "We're ready when you are," they said. But ready for what? That question still burns in my chest. I realized it wasn't just my family behind this. They had already pulled others into the circle. Not strangers, not enemies, but familiar faces who smiled at us every day. That's when it hit me. This plan was never about a single room or a single meeting. It was about building a net so wide that no matter where we stepped, the ropes close in. I walked back into the night, my footsteps heavy, the air thick with silence. My love, I kept asking myself, do I tell you everything right away, or do I hold back until I can prove it's real? But holding back felt like betrayal, and speaking too soon felt like putting fire in your hands. How do I protect you from something that's already inside the walls around us? The first person I decided to confront wasn't the loudest voice in the room. It was the quiet one, the one who barely spoke during the meeting, but nodded at all the right times. I thought maybe, just maybe, their silence meant hesitation. Maybe I could break through. Maybe they hadn't fully chosen the side they were standing on. When I faced them, I asked one question. Why? Just that one word. And for a second, their eyes softened, like they remembered what it means to feel. But then the mask slipped back into place, and they said, "It's already settled. You should accept it." Those words sliced through me. Already settled, without us, without even asking what we wanted. They spoke as if our voices never mattered in the first place, as if decisions can be made about us, around us, but never with us, and the way they said it, so calm, so final, made me wonder how many more decisions have already been made without us even knowing. I pushed harder. I told them I heard everything, every plan, every step. I wanted to see guilt flicker across their face, but instead they smiled, a small practiced smile that felt rehearsed. And then they whispered something I can't forget. "You weren't supposed to hear that, but since you did, now you carry the weight." Do you hear what that means, my love? Not only did they plan behind us, now they've put the burden on me, making me the one who carries secrets heavy enough to crush anyone who holds them. And they know that if I tell you, it could break us from the inside. That's the cruelest trick, using truth as a weapon. I stepped back, my heart pounding, because suddenly I realized this wasn't just about control. It was about testing us, watching how much we could take before we break ourselves apart. They want the fight to happen between us, not between us and them. That way, they don't get their hands dirty. I couldn't let them see me panic. So I asked them directly, "What happens if we refuse?" They didn't answer right away. They just tilted their head and said, "Then you'll learn how quickly silence can spread." My love, do you understand? They're not threatening loud punishment. They're threatening erasure. Quiet walls, closed doors, no one answering when we call. I walked away from that moment, more shaken than before. Not because I feared them, but because I saw how much they had prepared. They weren't going to strike in one blow. They were going to starve us of support, slowly, until we question ourselves. And that is harder to fight than anger. As I turned the corner, I saw two people standing in the dark. They weren't family, they weren't strangers either, just two familiar faces from daily life, looking at me like they already knew the script, and one of them whispered, "We'll be watching." My love, the more I try to break free, the more I see how many eyes are already in place. And it scares me. Not because I doubt us, but because I wonder how long we can keep walking before the ground beneath us isn't ours anymore. Listen, I can't carry this secret another night without you seeing what I found. Hiding it felt like holding a hot stone. Every step burns. Tonight I decided you must know everything exactly as it is before their quiet plan becomes our reality. The first thing I did was gather proof, not wild claims, not angry words, but small things that show their design, receipts for trips that weren't ours, a calendar page with dates circled, a polite letter typed and folded like an apology, but meant to push us out. Each paper was ordinary, but together they spelled a plan. I put them in a small envelope and labeled it simply, Read. When I opened the envelope, tucked behind the papers, was a printed card with a sentence meant to calm anyone who asked questions. It read like a promise. We will protect the family's peace. The words were soft, but the meaning was sharp. Peace at our cost. That card showed me how polite cruelty can be. Then I thought about how to bring this to you. Walk in and throw papers on the table. Felt reckless, whisper in your ear, and watch you dissolve into doubt felt cruel. So I made a plan that tried to be smart. I would show you the evidence in a way that made truth simple, and then asked one clear question. Do we stay and fight, or step away together? I picked a place where we both could breathe, not our kitchen, not the living room where their voices had filled the air. I chose the small bench by the river where the city sound thins, and your silence is honest. If anyone saw us talking there, people would think it was ordinary. That quiet cover felt safe enough for a dangerous talk. I walked to meet you carrying the envelope, like it weighed the world. Each step felt loud in my ears. I wanted to hand it to you and watch logic replace shock. But when I reached the bench, you were not alone. A stranger sat near you, acting like chance had placed them there. Their smile was too quick, their eyes not right for an ordinary passerby. My stomach dropped. The stranger stood up as if to leave, and dropped something on the bench. A small card. It looked casual, like a receipt or a note. And then they walked away, before we could react. You picked it up with a small laugh and read it out loud. We hope you choose peace. The words landed heavy between us. I stopped you before the laugh faded. I told you to read the envelope I had in my coat pocket. You looked at me, puzzled, then took the papers with hands that trembled a little. As you read, your brow tightened, and I could see the color drain from your face. With this fade, that look. It was the same one I'd worn the night I first overheard them. Proof works like a slow knife. You asked me quietly, who would do this? I wanted to answer with names and fury, but I held back. Instead, I gave you a map. Not names, but steps, dates, meetings. A smile that came with papers. I showed you the calendar, and the card, and the note from the neighbor's door. Each piece fit together in a pattern you could see. We sat in the quiet for a long time. I watched the way your hand closed around the envelope, like you were trying to keep the world from slipping. And then you said something that made everything sharper. If they want control, they want us to feel small. Your voice was flat, calm, but I could hear the edge under it. We had to decide what to do next, and fast. I suggested one move. Show one small piece of the truth to someone who would not be afraid to stand with us. Not a loud reveal, not a fight in the street, but a careful step to break their chorus of agreement. We needed one honest voice in the room with them. You nodded, then surprised me. Instead of asking me who to involve, you asked for the envelope back and said, we should let them think we accept until we are ready. That line could sound like surrender, but your eyes held something else. A plan. It was a cold, careful plan that matched what we faced. Your idea was risky. Pretend to go along to lower their guard, then pull the truth into light. When we have proof they cannot hide, it could work. Or it could let them tighten the net around us while we wait. It was a knife-edge choice. We decided to try a small test first. You would attend the next family talk and appear calm, open, and willing. I would not be there in the room. Instead, I would wait outside, watching for the moment they present their kind offer. If they used charm or paper to bind us, we would slip in then and show what we had gathered. If they did not, we would keep the plan moving. It felt like setting a trap with a single slow bait. The night of the meeting arrived sooner than we liked. The house smelled of boiled tea and clean things. Chairs were placed, notes were set, and polite smiles were polished, like knives in linen. You sat at the table as if you belonged there completely. I sat outside on the steps, chest tight, watching windows like a man counting years instead of minutes. Then something I did not expect happened. A whisper slipped through the door, like a small animal. We were hoping you would see sense. The voice sounded soft, practiced, like oil on chain. You answered with a short, polite word and a small laugh. The way you spoke made the room warmer, and for a moment I felt hope that kindness could be both shield and weapon. But while you held their gaze and nodded like a careful actor, I watched the hallway and noticed a movement behind the curtain, a shape passing with a box tucked against their chest. Not food, not gifts, something else. The box was plain, wrapped in brown paper, stamped with a name I recognized, one of the people they planned to use as proof. My skin went cold. I stood up then, the weight of the night making my legs feel hollow. I moved toward the window to get a better view of who carried the box. From this angle, I saw two people leaning close, speaking in hushed tones, and one of them pressing a small folder into the other's hand like a coin. That folder looked like the kind that holds signatures. As I stepped back, my foot struck something on the step. It wasn't a stone, it was a small recorder, hidden in shadow, its tiny red light blinking once before going dark. Someone planted it, to know if we would move, to measure our timing, to mark a moment, to act. The recorder had been waiting for us, and now it had heard more than we knew. So now we face a new truth. They prepare layers beyond paper. They record, they stage, they script smiles. And the room you just sipped tea in might already be full of proof they plan to use. We have one small chance left: reveal what we have now, or wait and risk everything being changed into a story that makes us the ones to blame.